What would you do if you found a strange child at your son's grave? And what if that child knew the truth no one else could tell? A racist millionaire woman threw him out in disgust. But what she didn't know was that the child held all the answers. This story will break your heart. The wind was blowing hard that morning at Los Olmos Cemetery. Dry leaves swirled among the tombstones as Clara Mendez, dressed in her designer coat, walked briskly toward her son Alvaro's grave, who had died just over a month ago in a car accident. Clara was well known in the city, owner of several properties, director of an art foundation, and one of the most influential women in the business world. But it was also known, though no one said it out loud, that Clara was classist, arrogant, and racist. She never admitted it, of course. "I'm just defending my values," she'd say. But her gestures, her veiled words, her way of looking at people said it all. When she reached the grave, something stopped her cold. A few feet away, right in front of the white marble headstone with golden letters, there was a boy, dark-skinned, skinny, wearing torn pants and a faded t-shirt. He was kneeling, head bowed, murmuring something. He held a single flower in his hand, a red rose. "Hey you," Clara shouted sharply. "What are you doing here? Get up right now." The boy slowly lifted his head. He had big, sad eyes. He stayed silent. "I said leave. Who gave you permission to be here? What do you want? Money? Food? This is no place for you." The boy stood up, never looking away from her. "I came to see Alvaro." Clara felt her face flush with blood. "How do you know my son? What are you saying? Don't lie." "He was my friend," the boy said, lowering his gaze. Clara let out a bitter laugh. "You? His friend? What nonsense is that? Alvaro would never hang out with someone like you." The boy didn't respond. He gently laid the rose on the grave and stepped back. "I swear, he came to the soccer field to play with us in the neighborhood. Nobody recognized him, but he came every Thursday, without fail. Sometimes he brought soda and bread. He told us things about his life, but he never said he was rich." Clara felt a pit form in her stomach. Alvaro had never told her that. "And what were you doing here? What did you want?" "I wanted to say I'm sorry. That I couldn't do anything that night," the boy whispered. Clara's anger turned into a stab of confusion. "What night?" "The night he died," the boy said, and his eyes filled with tears. Clara felt everything around her blur. She took a step toward him, then stepped back. She looked at him with disdain, with fear, with rage. She didn't know if he was telling the truth, if he was just another manipulator, if he was a sick child, or if he really knew something. "Leave. Leave right now, before I call security," she said, her voice breaking. The boy said nothing more. He walked toward the cemetery exit without looking back. As he walked away, Clara felt something unfamiliar, doubt, remorse, something that hurt more than the morning cold or the silence that surrounded her son's grave. In her mind, only two words echoed. That night. The boy. The rose. That night. She couldn't shake the phrase. Like a twisted nail between her ribs, it dug in deeper each time. The next day, she returned to the cemetery. This time without her designer coat, without makeup, without her chauffeur. She walked alone, as if that could bring her a little closer to Alvaro. But the boy wasn't there. Only the withered rose remained, still on the headstone. Clara stared at it with anger, then with doubt, and finally with fear. What if it was true? What if her son had really lived a life she never knew? She returned to her house that night, empty. The silence in her 300-square-meter apartment was deafening. She opened Alvaro's computer. She had looked through it before, but only superficially. Emails, social media, school files. This time she went deeper. She searched the hidden folders, the voice notes, the unnamed videos. She found one, shot from a phone, a soccer field, laughter, kids chasing a ball. And there was Alvaro, in sweats, his face dusty, laughing, hugging a smaller boy. The same boy from the cemetery. Clara felt something inside her break. For days, she looked for him. She asked at the cemetery gate, at the entrance to the neighborhood Alvaro had supposedly visited. She pretended to be doing a survey, offered money. No one said anything. Everyone looked at her with distrust, until an older woman, a candy vendor, said, "You're looking for Martina's son. The little one's name is Elias. Lives down the alley, next to the repair shop. Clara arrived with her heart pounding like a drum. It was a house made of wood and metal sheets, with a yard full of hanging laundry. She knocked. A thin woman with a stern look came out. "What do you want?" "I'm looking for Elias. I just want to talk to him." The woman looked her up and down, recognized her face. She said nothing, turned and shouted, "Elias, someone's here for you." The boy came out, wary. He wore the same t-shirt as before, slightly cleaner. Clara didn't know where to start. "I want you to tell me what happened." That night, Elias didn't move. He stared at her. "Why do you care now?" Clara swallowed hard. "Because I didn't know. Because I need to." Elias hesitated, then looked down and murmured. Alvaro came to play like always. But that night, he was different, like he was worried. He said he wanted to talk to someone, but didn't know who. That he'd seen something that he didn't know if he should tell. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. What had he seen? Elias looked up. He didn't say, just that he was scared, that he didn't want to go back home. Clara turned pale. "What happened next?" "I told him he could stay, but he said he couldn't, that someone was waiting. He left on foot. I followed. I saw him go into that alley behind the old factory." "The factory?" Clara whispered. "I saw him arguing with a man there. He was tall, white, wearing a black jacket. Alvaro was yelling something. I got closer, and then I heard a loud noise. Something metallic. I ran and hid. I didn't see clearly, but I heard someone say, 'You should have kept your mouth shut, idiot.'" Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "Why didn't you say anything before?" "Who would have cared?" Elias answered, almost bitterly. "Who would have believed me?" The question hung in the air like an uncomfortable truth. Clara said nothing. Her world had just shattered again. She hadn't just lost her son. Now she knew someone had killed him. And because of her prejudice, her arrogance, she had pushed away the only person who held the answers from the very beginning. "Do you remember anything else?" Clara whispered, her voice cracking. Elias hesitated. "Yes, there's something else." He lowered his gaze. His fingers played with a loose thread on his shirt, as if it helped him remember without it hurting too much. "After the blow, I stayed hidden. I couldn't move from fear. I heard the man looking for something, a backpack. Then he left. I waited. When I came out, Alvaro wasn't breathing anymore." Clara felt the air leave her lungs. Her whole body shook. She pictured her son, alone, scared, in a dark alley, while she, that night, slept in her soft bed, unaware her son was dying among trash and concrete. "He gave me a letter, a week before, said if anything ever happened to him, I should give it to his mom." Elias pulled it from his pocket. It was wrinkled, folded many times. Clara took it with trembling hands. She opened it. "Mom, I don't know if you'll ever understand me. Sometimes I feel like I live two lives. In one, I'm your son, the one who wears expensive shirts and goes to perfect dinners. But in the other, I'm just me, with my friends, playing in the street, laughing without being judged. Sometimes I hear you speak badly about them, about people like them. And it hurts, because if you met them, if you looked past their color and saw their hearts, you'd love them the way I do. I just want to be free. And if one day I don't come back, I want you to know I was happy, even in little pieces. Love, Alvaro." Clara clutched the letter to her chest. She couldn't help it. She cried. For the first time in a long time, she cried without holding back. She knelt in the middle of that poor, dirty yard, not caring who saw her. She cried as a mother, not as a millionaire, not as an influential woman, as a mother who realized, too late, that she never truly knew the boy she raised. When she lifted her head, Elias was still there, standing in front of her. She looked into his eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for loving him," she said, her voice broken. "Thank you for being there when I wasn't." Elias said nothing. He just nodded. Weeks later, at Alvaro's grave, there were no longer just expensive flowers or imported candles. There were soccer balls signed by children, hand-drawn letters, a shirt with dirt-stained knees. Clara had created a foundation in her son's name, a school for soccer, art, and writing for children for forgotten neighborhoods. Every Friday, she went to watch the practices. Sometimes she just watched from a distance, her eyes wet. Other times, she sat next to Elias in the stands, saying nothing, sharing the same silence. She was no longer the same woman, because love, even the kind that comes late, can still change everything.